I am Sandy Mayer. I'm one of the directors here at iPub Cloud, and I am excited and gratified to host this meeting for Rabbi Hirshel Jaffe, and also to welcome the Rudins here, who are all the co-authors of the book, Why Not Me? And it's been an honor for real, all of you, to work with you on this project, to meet you and interact with you. All of you are so tremendous in your accomplishments and your personalities and your optimism, really. Your book was published nearly 40 years ago now, believe it or not, and it was a beacon of hope then, and it's a beacon of hope now. All of you have been unwavering in your commitment to doing good and to spreading optimism throughout. So I think you're all in for a treat. Why do we come together and listen to one another this way? I believe that we do this because when we come together to listen to someone who is 89 years old, sorry, Herschel, who's a rabbi, who's a multiple marathon running rabbi, and a 5-time cancer survivor and an author. We know that he has something worthy to share. And I think we know that when we listen to someone wise like that, we weave together his experiences with our own, and it informs them and it helps to transform them. And I think that that's how we produce and construct collective wisdom, right? My parents and grandparents were Polish and German, and I grew up with them not speaking to one another. They didn't even get in the same room because of the culture of the war. By the time I was 12, I had an influence over them, as only children will do, right, to bring them together a little bit. And I think that informed the work that I did later in my life. And Professor Leonard Swidler, one of the founders of iPub, was also from a family where his father was Jewish and his mother was Catholic, and he had some very difficult times as a youngster, which informed him. And I trust that the Rudins and Herschel are inspirations of the same type, that their devotion and their chosen activities in life, their book writing and all of that was done as a result of wanting to make the world better in the best ways that they knew how to do. And at iPub, at our publishing company, we are the same way. All of us that work at iPub are all people that have similar feelings, that where we want to amplify and we want to share these kinds of messages, that we want to share them in books and in any way that we can. And a presentation like this one is one part of that. And the hope is that it's going to permeate the culture. And more recently, we hope that it's going to permeate artificial intelligence, right? Because there's a big change happening in the next 5 years. So we're all mutually motivated to do that. So Herschel, your hope for life is like a warrior. You are a delight for people to talk to, even for 10 minutes, because you can feel your contagion. So it's wonderful. So anyway, I thank you for attending, and I thank you for the book and the work that you've done, and I thank you for agreeing to do this presentation. So let's listen to the rabbi now.
Thank you, Sandy, and everybody at iPub. I would like to wish shalom and blessing to everybody watching now and those who will see the recording, and begin with a Hebrew prayer. Yehu l'ratzon imrefi v'hegyon libi lefanecha, Adonai tzuri v'goali. May the words of my mouth and the meditations of my heart be acceptable in your sight, O Lord, my rock and my redeemer. In 1978, I competed in the New York City Marathon. I got the nickname the Running Rabbi, Marathon Rabbi. And when I crossed the finish line, I felt indestructible. But of course, that's an illusion, as I would learn. We don't live forever. So in November 4th, 1979, the revolutionaries in Tehran took 52 Americans hostage. And I watched TV, day one, day two, and I heard that there was a professor from Kansas who was organizing a mission to see the hostages. And I found him and said, Professor, I'm not a big shot rabbi, but I would like to join your mission. And so on February 5th, we left Riverside Church in New York with many clergy and people who worked in human rights. And we landed in Tehran. And it was a big airport like American Airlines. And all you saw on the walls were pictures of Khomeini and a lot of soldiers with machine guns. So that's the way we began. And we stayed at a hotel that the militants provided for us. And to take some of the tension away, I actually ran around the perimeter of the hotel. It was called it was originally named the Jerusalem Hotel, but it was renamed the Hotel of the Glorious Revolution. We were there for 11 days. And on February 11th, we were the only Westerners in Tehran then. And we were escorted to watch a parade demonstration in Freedom Square with 1 million chanting Iranians. And they set up scaffolding for us as the Western visitors. And all of a sudden, the scaffolding started shaking and it actually collapsed. And people were crushed underneath us. I managed to jump off, and next to me landed a Quaker girl from Pennsylvania, Pam. And she said, Rabbi, I'm so scared. Do something. I said, okay, I'll tell you the story of my life. I was born in Brooklyn. So we wandered through the streets of Tehran holding hands. And then some Iranian women saw us, and I said, Pam, Ixnay on the hand holding. And we rejoined the other Americans. That was on February 11th. On Valentine's Day, we were taken to the American embassy to visit with the hostages and offer them comfort and prayer. We had a wonderful meeting with the hostages, but we could tell that they couldn't really say everything that was happening. The militants had a hold over them. And the hostages were permitted to write letters to their families back home, ironically on the red, white, and blue stationery of the American embassy. And they handed the sheaf of envelopes to me, and we promised to take them to their loved ones back home. And we got up to leave, and all of a sudden, the militants said, we have to detain you, clergy people. Really? We have seen one of you receiving a secret message from one of the hostages, and they were looking straight at me. I was wearing a yarmulke. I was encouraged to be out front as a rabbi to encourage the Jews of Tehran. And with bravado, I said, I demand to be searched. And it was the longest 15 minutes of my life. And with that Jewish sense of humor, as they were letting me go, I tipped up my yarmulke and said, you forgot to look under here, boys. That was in 1979, 1980. And 2 years later, I became a hostage to a rare leukemia. Never sick a day in my life. I was running on the beach in Martha's Vineyard where we had our summer home. And I felt strangely tired and looked down, and my leg had a big black and blue mark. And I knew my body. I knew something was wrong. I went to a doctor and where I lived, and he said, oh, that's probably mononucleosis. But I just knew that something was drastically wrong. So we went to see a pathologist a friend of ours. My daughter Nina was with me, and they took my blood, and the pathologist made slides, and he came in to speak to us, and he dropped the slides. And later he said he was so upset at what he saw. He saw evidence of this very rare leukemia, hairy cell leukemia. And my daughter saw the serious, somber look on the faces of the doctor and the nurses and the technicians, and she said, "Is my daddy going to die?" I never thought that I was going to surrender or succumb. I have a very positive spirit. My childhood nickname was Sunshine. So I said, "Okay, doctors, what are we going to do about this?" And they said, "We don't have much for you now." They gave me oral chemotherapy, and we heard that there was a doctor in Chicago, Dr. Harvey Gollum, a brilliant oncologist, who was experimenting with the immunological drug interferon and the possibility that it might work with hairy cell leukemia. So 2 years later, with fevers of 105, I was taken on a little Angel of Mercy flight that takes cancer patients, wearing a mask. And we arrived at the University of Chicago Hospital. And that night, the doctors got emergency permission, compassionate usage from the FDA to try to save my life. Compassionate usage because, the doctors don't like you to die and ruin their experiment. So there I was in the hospital fighting for my life. And it was a very tough time in the hospital. I think they took the mirror away in my hospital room. They wanted to see how emaciated I was. And I became depressed. I wasn't eating. And the doctors and nurses came into me and said, "Rabbi, we want to make a contract with you. We'll give you some more pain medication," because at that time, for some reason, I had pain throughout my body and it was very difficult to bear. They said, "We'll give you pain medication and we'll take you down to the basement, to the gym, and you'll go into a pool of warm water to ease your suffering." So we went down to the gym, and I looked over, and there was a young guy in a wheelchair, and he was trying to lift himself up onto parallel bars, and they were saying, "Come on, Jerry, you can do it." I tell you, if he lifted himself an inch, that was a lot. And I thought, what guts? So remembering that the doctors said to me, "Why don't I be a rabbi and reach out to other people in the hospital?" That evening, I went down the hall into Jerry's room, and he was a lot worse than I was. And he said to me, "Oh, how you doing, Hirshel? What did your doctors tell you?" And I said, "Oh, I don't know. I don't think they want to give me the bad news."
Right.
And he said, "Wait a minute. You're Jewish, aren't you?" I said, "Yes." He said, "Didn't I hear that you're a rabbi?" I said, "Yes." He said, "Well, Rabbi, I'm a Christian. I don't know much about the Jewish religion, but didn't I hear that the Jewish people are a people of hope? That the national anthem of the Jewish people is Hatikvah, the hope?" I'll tell you, everyone, I think at that moment, that young Christian knew more about my religion than I did. Well, the doctors began giving me the interferon, and also I almost succumbed to the rare TB, similar to what the AIDS patients suffer. And they were very worried about that. I had every drug you could possibly imagine. I had drug reactions, and they were trying to turn me around. And one night, so some Christian clergy came to my bedside, And they said, "Can we pray with you, Rabbi?" I said, "Yes." And they didn't pray the formal liturgy. I lift my eyes to the mountains. They said, "Dear God, here's our friend Hirshel. He's lying in this bed. He's suffering a lot. He wants to be free and see his daughter ice skating and attend her wedding under the chuppah." And that prayer began to work. So, remembering that the pastors had taught me how to pray, that night, in the middle of the night, in my hospital bed with terrible fevers, I began to pray. And I didn't say, "I lift my eyes to the mountains from whence cometh my help," that psalm. I couched it in personal terms. I said, "Dear God, I'm trying to get up this mountain. And every time I get up a little way, I fall back again. So, Lord Hashem, would you hold my hand and keep me from falling into the abyss?" And that prayer worked for me. After weeks in the hospital, I finally responded. I actually went with my doctor to testify twice before Congress, asking for more money for cancer research to discover drugs like the one that saved my life. And as an experimental patient, I had to return many times to the hospital, and they would do a bone marrow and take my blood and check me out. And so when I returned to the hospital on one of my visits, I said, "How's my friend Jerry?" And they said, "Oh, he's not doing that well." So I went to Jerry's room and I said, "Hey, Jerry, you really got a lot of guts." He said, "Well, what are you talking about, Rabbi? You're brave yourself." And I went and prayed about Jerry, and I thought about him. And every time I came back to the hospital on my monthly visits, I would see my friend Jerry. And finally, about the fourth visit, I went to the hospital in Chicago. I said, "How's my friend Jerry?" And they said, "Rabbi, he didn't make it." And I burst out into tears. I went into the chapel and prayed. And I said, "How am I going to remember my wonderful friend Jerry? He was taken too young." I know, for the first time in the Kaddish prayer, the memorial prayer that we mention our deceased for blessing, I added Jerry's name, and I do that all the time. I wanted to say that uh, when I was in the hospital, my dear friends, Rabbi Jim Rudin and Marcia, who are authors, and they said, "Hirshel, you have a story to tell." And I said, "Really?" And they said, "Yes." And Marcia recorded me, and then she transcribed the remarks and sent me the text in the mail. And I remember that the envelope came, the manila envelope, with what Marcia had written and composed. And I was actually too weak to open the envelope. The nurses had to open it up for me. And that's how we wrote "Why Me, Why Anyone." On the cover, it says, "Who will comfort the comforter?" When I returned to my temple after many months of recuperation, one of my congregants came to me on the bima and said, "Hirshel, you have comforted so many. Let us comfort you." And that really was wonderful. And maybe When I was the running rabbi, maybe I ran past people, and but from my suffering and my insight, I learned to be much more of a rabbi, of a caring rabbi. What is the heart of true religion? Our ancestor and sage and philosopher Maimonides said in the book called the Mishnah Torah, no matter how much ritual you perform, how many rosary beads, how much kosher you keep, you can't call yourself a religious or spiritual person unless you're kind to other people. So to me, the heart of true religion is human goodness and decency, and it far surpasses denominational lines. We're all children of God. I feel that I did gain some insights that I share with people in the book that we just wrote. It's the sequel, bringing people up to date as to what's happened in the last 40 years, all about the 5 cancers that I've endured. And at the very end of the book, I have my guidance for people to cope. And I hope you all get the book, Why Not Me, and see this guidance. Here are some of the points that I mentioned to help people cope with illness and adversity. Cheer yourself on. Ultimately, you must learn to comfort yourself no matter how many people are around you during the day. Reality can be very hard to face in the loneliness of night. Be kind to yourself. Don't think of yourself as worthless or worth less than you were before your diagnosis. And don't be passive about your medical treatment. Let your doctors and nurses know what you need. Learn to cherish your very existence. Don't feel guilty if you're too sick to do something. You have value simply because you exist, even if you can't be productive in the ways you were before. Hang on to your fighting spirit. I really believe that my fighting spirit meant the difference between life and death for me. My nurses told me that once I was delirious with these fevers, and they said, Rabbi, you were pounding on your bed rails as if you were in a marathon and you were yelling out, come on, Hirshel. I was cheering myself on like my wife and daughters cheered for me when I ran in the marathon. But conversely, attitude isn't everything. Having a good attitude can help you make the best of every situation, but it may not help you change your situation. You just can't control everything. Set goals for yourself. No matter how small, reaching any goal helps you to feel a sense of achievement. Write about your experience. Writing about my illness with the Rudins gave me something to live for. Some days it took a lot out of me to write even a few words. But completing my book helped me to keep my fighting spirit alive. Keep some normalcy in your life. If you're able to use your energy in some capacity, do it. Even if it's 5 minutes a day. If physical limitations prevent you from doing usual tasks, try to devise new ways to do them. And focus on what's good about yourself. When my physicians noticed how depressed I was in the hospital, they said, be a rabbi. Go counsel other patients. Doing that made me feel important again. And my friends who are fighting cancer tell me the same thing. Helping others is one good thing that they can do to find real fulfillment in doing. And don't lose your sense of humor. Learn to laugh at yourself and enjoy life. My childhood nickname is Sunshine. Be thankful for every day and greet it joyously. And I want to say, I'm 89 years old. I really shouldn't be here. I remember once on a visit to the University of Chicago for a checkup, one of the surgeons saw me in the elevator. He says, "Rabbi Jaffe?" I said, "Yes." He said, "You're not supposed to be here." So, yeah, that's what I'm saying. Um, you know, and try to be as fulfilling as you can and be thankful for every day and greet it joyously. And there's a beautiful 4-word prayer that I say so many times. It's called in Hebrew benching gomel. When you're recovered from illness or danger, you go on in front of the congregation before the Holy Ark and you say these 4 words, Baruch shegamalani kol tov. Blessed are you who has done me much good. And I say that prayer 100 times a day. And if I forget to follow the spirit that was infused in me, I have to remind myself. I remember riding along in my Jeep one day and I was falling back on the old habits, jealousy and greed and all that. And I stopped and I lectured myself. And I said, Hirshel, have you learned nothing? Decide what's important in your life. Actually, I'm learning to say no to people. I don't want to fritter away my life telling other people how to live. For me, being with my loved ones is most important. And so make a point of telling those people how you feel about them. I have a lifelong friend, and he had a terrible accident. And during his hospitalization, when he was fighting this terrible injury, I visited him and I called him every day. Friends, that's much more important than Facebook, which is very remote and abstract. If you want to do a deed, visit somebody. In the morning prayers of the Jewish prayers, it says, Elu devarim she'ein lahem shiur. These are the things without measure. Accompanying the bride and groom, visiting the mourner. And it says, the last line is, the Talmud Torah keneged kulam. The study of Torah is above all, meaning that the word Torah, our 5 books of Moses, it really means guidance. It's like you have an arrow and you're shooting at the mark to do the mitzvahs, the good deeds in life. Accept the support of friends. I think sometimes I was going to visit a patient in the hospital and he didn't want to share with anybody what was happening to him. He wanted to be all alone. And I think you really need to reach out and get the support of everybody who loves you, because your friends can keep you going through the darkest hours. And don't be afraid to let other people know how vulnerable you are. It's not a sign of weakness to accept help. Search for meaning from your adversity. I believe that we can find meaning and hope even in our darkest days. I didn't ask for this painful experience, but I can choose to grow from it and shape it into a positive force in my life. I also continue to try to practice tikkun olam, repairing a troubled world, where possible, as our Jewish tradition urges, through our deeds of justice and compassion and loving kindness, such as when I visited the 52 American hostages in Iran, as Jim describes in our book. On the 40th anniversary of that visit, the BBC told the story of my visit in a documentary. And although I'm a rabbi and I'm proud of my Jewish heritage, I have evolved spiritually to believe that we're all children of the eternal, no matter what religion or belief system, because the true heart of all religion is human goodness and decency. I hope everybody watching that my story will touch on the themes that will resonate with you. Finding faith and strength in the face of suffering, surviving critical illness and the long road to recovery, wrestling with the question of why me, and finding peace without easy answers. And my hope is that by sharing my experiences, you might not feel as alone in your struggles, and you will be more connected to the universal search for meaning. And I would be very grateful if you would accept my words expressed in humility. And on my website, my inspirational website, marathonrabbi.com, I hope you check it out. It has all the videos, including a video of my visit to Iran. And on the website, I put my name and my phone number and my email. And I say to people who go to my website, if I can help you in any way, please let me do a mitzvah for you. A few nights ago, a woman saw my website, marathonrabbi.com, and she called me from Paris. And she said, Rabbi, I was diagnosed with leukemia. I'm so scared. Can you help me? Can you pray with me? And of course I did. I'm very grateful for all of you for listening. I hope that I reach you in some way. And I pray that someday we'll be free of illness, that we'll find the drugs that will save people's lives as it did mine. And I'm very grateful for all of you for listening. And if there are any questions, I'd be grateful to answer them.
Thank you, Rabbi. Appreciate it. I have asked Marcia and Jim to unmute to see if they were interested in sharing any sentiments or questions, comments, etc. And we're happy if people would want to use the Zoom feature to raise their hand, or they can use the chat feature if they have a question or a comment. I did want to mention, because I didn't mention in the beginning, that we created a discount code for our website, Zoom15, ZOOM15, capital letters. If someone would like to purchase their book, they can do that at a discount, or any book. But I have one question that I'd like to ask. It's a little bit of a question / comment. And when bad things happen to us in the world, it's easy to ask, why me? Or even, why them, right? Do you feel like you ever get an answer, or did get an answer to that? Or did the whole experience just lead you to say, well, what now?
Yes, it did. And about why me? Some people said because I was a rabbi and had a connection to God, that my life was saved. I don't believe that. I believed it was my fighting spirit, the medicine, the doctors. And I think that every human being is precious in the sight of God. And we're living in a very distrustful, angry world. And I pray the day will come when people will be able to approach one another in peace. That will be, they say that when all the world is at peace, then the Messiah will come. And by the way, in the Jewish tradition, they say, when the Messiah comes, where will he be? Surely within the confines of the Holy Temple. And they said, no, the Messiah will be outside the walls of the temple. Really? What will he be doing? Putting on the bandages of those who suffer.
Beautiful. Yeah, that's an answer. That's what now, right?
Yep.
Marcia and Jim, would you like to share?
Well, I just want to say, gee, what a wonderful presentation, Herschel. Um, your survival has amazed us, and we're so happy. At one point, when we were writing the book, uh, and there was no email or anything. We just mailed stuff back and forth. I don't know how we ever did it, but anyway, Herschel said, "Go ahead and finish the book without me." He was that near death, or felt he was near death. But fortunately, we didn't have to finish it without him. But Jim and I really contributed what Judaism has to say about all of this kind of situation. And unfortunately, or I guess it's the strength of Judaism, it doesn't have pat answers. And, Herschel's not connected to God because he's a rabbi, and we're not sure where there's a heaven, and a better life beyond. Maybe there is, maybe there isn't. The Judaism is unable to give you certain answers to these questions. It encourages us to question and to question even hostilely. But I think people reading the book would be inspired by what Herschel has taken away from in his experience of connecting with people, of and his humor and his good attitude towards the situation. These are questions that cannot be ever answered. Why does God allow evil? I mean, we're assuming there is a God. We'll assume that. Why is there suffering? Why is there evil? Why are little babies dying of cancer? We can't answer that. We just have to learn to live in a world that is often very difficult and painful.
You're so right, Marcia. The Jews are a questioning people from the time of Abraham, saying, Hashofet kol haaretz lo ya'aseh mishpat, will the judge of all the earth not do justly? So we believe in a God that can take our arguments and contentions, and we're not passive. We just believe that as the prophet said, what does God really want of you? Only to do justly, love mercy, and walk humbly with your God. And so these are the deeds that we believe get us ready for the world to come.
Let me fill in a little bit for the people who are watching, a little bit about Herschel's background. He and I traveled the couple of same paths. He was 2 years behind me in rabbinical school. I served as an Air Force chaplain in Japan and Korea. He followed me and served as an Air Force chaplain in California. My first civilian congregation was in Kansas City. When I left Kansas City to join the American Jewish Committee, guess who followed me? Rabbi Hirshel Jaffe. Herschel, would you comment on the Hebrew when we talk about prayer? Hitpalel. It's a internal kind of verb, means to examine oneself.
Yes.
Hitpalel is a Hebrew. I don't want to overdo the linguistics. Would you comment on that concept of really a conversation with oneself, a serious conversation, an honest conversation? Writing a book was not joyful. It was very painful for us, for Marcia and me, because as you said, we never knew that 40 years later, we'd be talking to Herschel is not supposed to be on the elevator at the University of Chicago Medical Center. So would you talk about hipalel a little bit?
Yeah, it's a reflexive verb, and really to pray in the Hebrew sense is to, by our actions, that's prayer. Prayer is reaching out with deeds of goodness. And I wanted to mention that my grandson was bar mitzvah in Los Angeles, and his talk was about courage. And he said, I asked my grandpa Herschel how he found courage in the face of pain and adversity. And Grandpa Herschel told me that Psalm 138 in the Bible begins with the words, B'yom kraticha v'ta'aneni. In the day I called to you, O Lord, you answered me. And the last line is, leave not your work unfinished. So my grandson said, that means that my grandpa has more mitzvahs to do. And that's what I try to teach my followers, especially when I talk to senior citizens who feel that they're just spinning the wheels. I said, no, you can do mitzvahs. You can do something, reach out to a friend, be caring. That's the legacy that you leave, not your wealth, not the trappings, but the mitzvahs, the deeds that you perform, the acts of goodness.
You know, it's important to realize we republished a book 40, I think it's over 40 years later, but as we were writing it, we didn't know the outcome.
You didn't know the ending.
We didn't know the ending, and it was a slow process because we didn't have email and texting, computers. It was a slow process, and it's a long time ago, but I remember distinctly that we were very unsure. It was a very nerve-wracking time, and of course, less for us than for Herschel, but the reader, looking back on the 40 years, it's a different experience, but actually having written it at the time, as I look back on it, kind of added to the drama of the writing, I think.
Because we've updated the book thanks to
We updated it, but it's basically the same book. I mean,
same book, but there's
it's the same book.
same
just
questions
with a introduction explaining 40 years later, the status of our families, things like that, and the fact that Herschel survived. Unfortunately, his first wife, Judy, ironically, is the one that died of ear cancer. But it's basically word for word, what we went through. But it's interesting looking back on it. But we have to recall that, and Herschel too, as we were writing it, we didn't know the outcome.
Well, it sounds like you kind of guessed the outcome was going to be that he might not be there for the publication.
I remember distinctly him saying, finish it.
Finish the book.
Yeah. And here we are. It's pretty remarkable.
In 2015.
Yeah.
2025, excuse me.
Yeah, 2025. Elise Draper has officially lost her voice, and I had asked her earlier if she would make a comment or share, and so I have something that I'm going to read from Elise, who many of you know. And she writes, I started working with Jim and Marcia on his memoir, and so this is Jim Rudin's The People in the Room book, and from the outset, I remember thinking what an incredible honor it was to meet them, let alone collaborate on something so personal and meaningful. The phrase, their reputation precedes them, immediately came to mind, though I quickly realized how insufficient that cliche was. It's a bit like noticing only the trunk on the elephant in the room. You get a sense that something significant is in front of you, but you're missing its sheer scale. A casual glance at their respective biographies reveals a staggering accumulation of stories, achievements, and wisdom. It's the kind of legacy that can't be captured in a quick summary or a few bullet points. Just scratching the surface leaves you uncovering great acts and profound teachings, like splinters of history lodged under your fingernails, evidence of lives lived with conviction, impact, and more than a little style. And there I was, lucky enough to be part of the process of helping to bring one of those lives into print. For anyone who might think my feelings for the Rudins are unclear, let me clarify, yes, I am fangirling. What I did not expect was a friendship to bloom, for the house to be accepted as if we were family. Thank you for thrashing expectations and allowing us into your metaphorical home. So here from Elise.
That's lovely.
Beautiful.
Yeah.
First, would you comment a little bit more about your congregation's reaction? You touched on it a little bit.
Oh, yeah. Actually, it's a mixed bag. When I went back to my congregation in Newburgh, some people said, Herschel, take all the time you need. Then other people said,
Trapped or
why isn't he back preaching and conducting services? But like I said, I remember when I came back from Chicago, I couldn't conduct services. Jim, was it you that helped conduct services?
I did one of your daughters.
That's right. And I was sitting in the congregation, and they were reciting the Yiska memorial prayer. And I thought to myself, I wonder if they'll be reciting that for me. So I believe that what happened to me is such a blessing that that's why I say that prayer. Blessed are you, who has done me much good.
I'll be right back.
Open the shades. Would you?
Yeah, I will.
Thank you, Marcia, Jim, Rabbi Rudin, Elise, everyone. Does anyone else have any questions or comments?
Well, I did have one. I thought it might be a good one to wrap up with. And so, Rabbi, if somebody listening today or somebody who hears this recording in the future is struggling with, grief or worry or just the state of the world, what is one takeaway, one thing? What's the most important thing you would want them to remember when they wake up tomorrow morning?
I would say, don't take life for granted. There is goodness in every human being, and we should appreciate the gift of life that's been given to us. We should make the best of it. There was a rabbi who was worried that when he went to God and was before the holy throne and the angels, that he wouldn't be able to say that he was as good as Moses. And the answer from the angels was, no, just be the best you that you can. So that's what I would say.
Just be the best you that you can.
Best you that you can, yes.
There's the soundbite right there. Just be the best you that you can.
Thank you, everyone. It's been great
Thank
getting
you.
together, great sharing.
Thank you. Thank you.
Yes.
Thank
Thank you,
you.
everybody. It's good to see everyone here.
Yep.
Thank you, Rabbi.
That was great, Herschel.
Thank you so much,
Thank you.
Herschel.
God bless.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Mhm.
Bye, everybody. Bye for now. Thank you.
Bye for now.
Bye.